If Ken Paxton and James Talarico end up facing each other in Texas, it would not be a normal Senate race. One candidate is the Texas Attorney General, known nationally for lawsuits, conservative legal fights, Trump-aligned politics, and years of legal and ethics controversy. The other is a Democratic state representative, a former teacher, and a Presbyterian seminarian whose campaign is built around public schools, healthcare, faith, democracy, and a very different argument about political power. This video is not a prediction, it is not a campaign ad, and it is not here to tell you who to vote for. This is a matchup explainer. The question is simple. If Texas voters get Paxton versus Talarico, what would the choice actually be about? Start with the race status, because this part can change quickly. AP reported that Talarico won the Texas Senate Democratic nomination, and the Texas Tribune described him as the Austin Democrat who won his party's nomination in March. FEC records captured for this project list James Talarico as a Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate in Texas, with Talarico for Texas as his principal campaign committee. Paxton is on the Republican side of the race. He is Texas Attorney General, and recent coverage has placed him in a Republican runoff against John Cornyn. The Texas Tribune reported that Donald Trump endorsed Paxton in that runoff. So this comparison should be read with one caveat. If the Republican result changes, the final script needs a race status refresh. But the reason this matchup is already worth explaining is that polls have tested it. The Texas Tribune reported in late April that Talarico led both Cornyn and Paxton in 2 successive Texas Senate polls, while still not reaching 50%. That matters. A lead under 50 is not a lock. It is a signal that voters are open to a fight, but not settled on the outcome. The cleanest contrast is this. Paxton is asking voters to reward confrontation. His campaign presents him as a conservative fighter who used the Attorney General's office to challenge Democratic administrations, federal agencies, and national policy. Talarico is asking voters to believe that a different kind of Democrat can compete statewide in Texas. Religious but anti-Christian nationalist, progressive but Texas-specific, and rooted in public education and healthcare instead of Washington seniority. That is why the matchup is more interesting than a party label. Paxton's question to voters is, do you want a senator who fights like an attorney general? Talarico's question is, do you want a senator who frames politics as public service, moral language, and working family policy? Both are trying to make the Senate race about more than the Senate. Ken Paxton's public power comes from his office. As Texas Attorney General, he leads the state's legal office. His political identity is closely tied to litigation. Lawsuits against federal policy, defenses of Texas conservative laws, and high-profile cases that made Texas part of national political fights. His campaign presents that as proof of strength. It says he fought the Biden administration, defended conservative priorities, and would bring that same posture to the U.S. Senate. That should be labeled for what it is, campaign framing. The public record does show a pattern of legal confrontation. The interpretation is where voters split. Supporters see a conservative attorney general willing to use every tool available. Critics see a politician whose career is built around conflict, court fights, and controversy. For VoteTrace, the fair point is narrower. Paxton's attorney general record is not background information. It is the center of his Senate brand. This section needs precision. Paxton's legal and ethics record is relevant, but allegations are not convictions, and outcomes matter. In 2023, the Texas House impeached Paxton on articles alleging misconduct, bribery, and corruption. Paxton denied wrongdoing. AP reported that the Texas Senate acquitted him on the impeachment articles it considered. So the fair wording is not that impeachment proved corruption. It did not. The fair wording is that Paxton was impeached on serious allegations, denied wrongdoing, and was acquitted by the Texas Senate. Paxton also faced a state securities fraud case that lasted for years. AP reported that prosecutors agreed in 2024 to drop the charges under a pretrial diversion deal, requiring nearly $300,000 in restitution. Paxton had pleaded not guilty, and the case ended without a conviction. Then there is the Nate Paul and whistleblower matter. Former senior aides accused Paxton of misusing his office to help Austin developer Nate Paul. Paxton denied wrongdoing. AP later reported that Paul pleaded guilty to a federal charge of lying to a financial institution, and that Paxton was not mentioned in the federal indictments against Paul. Texas Tribune reported that former aides won a $6.6 million whistleblower judgment. The point is not to turn every allegation into guilt. The point is that Paxton would enter a general election fight with a long, public, complicated record that opponents can easily put on screen. For his supporters, that may look like political persecution and survival. For swing voters, it may look like risk. Talarico's record is much less national, but it is still checkable. He is a Democratic member of the Texas House. His official and campaign biographies describe him as a former public school teacher. His campaign leans heavily into public education, healthcare, faith, democracy, and working family economics. Some of that is campaign identity. Some of it lines up with official records. In 2019, the Texas House Journal showed Talarico voting yes on HB 486, a bill about bleeding control stations and related training in public schools. That same year, the House Journal showed him voting yes on adopting the Conference Committee report for HB 3, the major Texas public school finance bill of that session. On healthcare, the earlier VoteTrace research found official Texas legislature records listing Talarico as a House sponsor of SB 827 in 2021, which capped covered insulin cost sharing at $25 per prescription for a 30-day supply. It also found him listed as one of the House authors of HB 25 in 2023, the Wholesale Prescription Drug Importation Act, which created a Texas program for wholesale importation of lower-cost prescription drugs from Canadian suppliers. That does not prove every campaign claim. It does support a narrower point. Talarico's education and prescription drug cost message is not just a vibe. There are official records behind parts of it. The more unusual part of Talarico's pitch is the way he talks about faith and democracy. His campaign says he is a Presbyterian seminarian studying to become a pastor. It says his faith leads him to reject Christian nationalism and defend separation of church and state. That is candidate-authored framing, not an independent judgment. But it matters because it explains why he has become visible beyond normal state legislator circles. He is not running only as a technocratic Democrat. He is trying to challenge Republican moral language directly from inside a religious vocabulary. That could help him with voters who are tired of culture war politics, but not hostile to faith. It could also give Republicans an easy line of attack, that the rhetoric is polished, but the voting record and platform are still democratic and progressive. So Talarico's challenge is not just getting attention. He already has some of that. His challenge is converting attention into statewide trust. Put the two candidates side by side, and the issue contrast gets sharp. On immigration and the border, Paxton's campaign emphasizes border security, the wall, deportations, and confrontation with federal immigration policy. Talarico's campaign uses a different Texas frame, welcoming lawful immigrants and refugees while focusing enforcement on cartels, traffickers, and people who mean harm. On elections, Paxton has made election integrity central to his brand and was involved in high-profile post-2020 election litigation, including Texas versus Pennsylvania. The Supreme Court rejected that case for lack of standing. Talarico, meanwhile, was listed among the nays on a key 2021 House vote, advancing CSSB 1, Texas's major election law package, to third reading. On abortion, Paxton has defended strict Texas abortion laws from the Attorney General's office. Talarico was listed in the nays on SB 8 on third reading in the Texas House. On education, Talarico has a direct public school lane. Paxton's Senate campaign is not built around public schools in the same way. His stronger brand is law, border, elections, and federal power. On governing style, the contrast is almost the whole story. Paxton offers legal combat. Talarico offers moral persuasion and public service language. Texas voters would have to decide which style feels more useful in the U.S. Senate. The polling hook is tempting, but it needs discipline. A poll showing Talarico ahead of Paxton does not mean Talarico would win Texas. It means the race has a shape worth watching. Paxton has statewide name recognition, deep Republican connections, a Trump-aligned message, and a base that may read every controversy as proof that he fights the right enemies. Talarico has a different opening. He can try to improve Democratic margins with young voters, suburban voters, education-focused voters, and people attracted to his faith and democracy message. But Texas is still Texas. A Democrat does not win statewide by going viral alone. Talarico would need turnout, persuasion, money, discipline, and a Republican opponent who gives enough swing voters permission to cross over or stay home. Paxton would need to keep the Republican base unified while preventing the race from becoming a referendum on his controversies. That is why this matchup could be so revealing. It would test whether Paxton's conflict-heavy brand is a general election weapon or a ceiling. And it would test whether Talarico's unusual Democratic profile can survive the jump from viral clips and state house votes to a full statewide campaign. A Paxton-Talarico race would be about policy, but it would also be about how voters want power used. Paxton's model is institutional combat. Use the office. Sue. Fight. Force national arguments through Texas legal power. Talarico's model is persuasion and coalition. Use biography, faith language, public school credibility, and specific state records to argue that Texas can choose a different path. Neither model guarantees better government. Both can be oversold. Paxton can point to a real record of action from a powerful statewide office. He also carries legal and ethics baggage that will follow him into every major interview, debate, and attack ad. Talarico can point to specific state legislative records and a message that breaks the stereotype of a secular national Democrat. He also has to prove that attention, speeches, and state house work can scale to a federal statewide race. That is the real comparison. Not hero versus villain. Not savior versus scandal. A choice between two public records, two campaign stories, and two very different bets on what Texas voters want from power. If this matchup happens, it will be easy for both sides to flatten it. Paxton's side will try to make it about strength, loyalty, and fighting Washington. Talarico's side will try to make it about schools, healthcare, democracy, and a new kind of Texas Democrat. The useful version is harder, but better. Check the records, separate campaign claims from official sources, label allegations and outcomes correctly, and treat polls as snapshots instead of prophecy. That is what voters deserve before a race this loud. Sources and candidate links are in the description. This video is independent and not affiliated with any campaign. If this was useful, like the video, subscribe for more source-backed civic explainers, and leave a comment. What part of this matchup do you think matters most? The legal record, the issue record, the Texas math, or something else?